Welcome, everybody. Happy Father's Day. I'm Davey.
Oh, and I'm Jackie.
And welcome to the Weekend Hangover. We'll do it live.
I know. Forget it.
Folks, I feel like I haven't been on the air in like months. There was a situation on Friday, so I didn't go live for We Don't Know Either podcast. Wednesday, my father-in-law had to go for, they put something like a camera into his heart, right? So he had to do that because of his job, and found out he had an 80% blockage in his heart.
At least they found out before anything happened and stuff, man.
I mean, he's good now. I mean, so Wednesday, so all of a sudden it went from like a 2-hour thing to like almost all day thing. So I'm very sad that I've missed your cousin because I was watching it, and
yeah,
he's he fits in our wheelhouse, man. I was just watching his new one the other day. I think it was Friday that he put out, and you could just hear the Philly in him. You really can. You really can. And I might have been the cause of why you guys went off the air.
I know. I was like, did you see how fast he got off the phone? I was like, who knew what he did?
I don't know what to do I don't know what to do from the phone. I have no idea. And I was trying not to mess anything up. And that's what I get for trying not to mess anything up. And it says on the bottom, it says, like, why would you give me that power on a phone? Like, I don't understand that. It says end, so I figured it was ending the phone call. And then when I saw broadcast ended and I saw all y'all just go, what just happened? And I went, oh shit. And they said leave.
No. I was like, what happened? I was like, it was Davey's fault. Did you see his face and how quickly he disconnected? It was fine.
And then I felt so bad because I was watching it this week, and then you're like, yeah, I don't know, but we had 13 people watching, and now we got to hopefully build it up again. And I was like, oh, that sucks so bad. And I felt so bad, but I was just like, I just wanted to pop in, say hi, and then leave. And the whole thing, I wanted to do what we want Jack to do, and just ask one stupid question and then bounce. And I just discombobulated the entire show.
It was you know what? We'll have him back again. It's not like I don't got his number, or anything like that. So
no, I like his takes, man. He's and I think why a lot of people like him is because he talks very soft and smooth, and he's just even with the Philly accent. It's like, then we went over to the Wawa, and then I don't know because people suck. You know what I mean? But yeah, I liked him. I thought he did a great job.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can definitely pick out a Philly accent if you hear them say the word home.
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 You're going to go to your home.
I went home and did my homework.
But, yeah, no, you guys, everything was great, fantastic. But, yeah, so that was my Wednesday. And, living in Kansas, nothing is like close. So everything's like 2-3 hours away. I mean, I love it. But when it comes to this stuff, it's like you got to plan everything out. Like today, the reason why we're late is because we went to Wichita to the zoo out there, and I saw silverback gorillas I think it was for the first time. I've been to a couple zoos, but I don't think I've ever seen a silverback gorilla up close. And these were right there up close. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. So
they're like huge, right?
They're thick. They thick. And I mean, so this dude was literally maybe 10, 15 feet away. And then there was another one like up in the corner. and like he was just staring at all us, like he was mad, like he was just like
just with his hands up like that and everything.
Yeah, with his hands on the bars, like on top, and he's just like, and he's just staring us down. And then like we walked away, and then the other one like swung over and then put his back to the window and was just like watching the other one just do things. And then the other one just like all of a sudden he just like came straight down on an angle with the things that they had there, and then went up. And it was just like, holy crap. Like you realize like they're dangerous. They're dangerous and they're quick. They're quick. So, but yeah, it was cool. I mean, I loved it. We watched all the giraffes. She didn't get to feed them, but yeah, it was hot.
Yeah.
80 degrees. It felt like the sun. So yeah, it was hot. But
wait, hon, it was only 80 degrees?
It was only 80 degrees, but you know what the 80 degrees in the middle of the United States feels like? It feels like you're sitting on the sun. It's exactly what it feels like.
But there's no humidity, so it's just like hot.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, listen, I like the breeze. The breeze was nice, which is different than like Jersey, because if you got a breeze and it's got like not 100% humidity, it's just a stank hot. Yeah. This one, when there's a breeze, it's nice and cool, you know. But yeah, it was still hot. Yeah. The sun was beaming down on us, and I looked like my wife kept asking me if I was having a good time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm having a great time. I love the zoo, and I love spending time with my wife and my father-in-law, and you know, and especially it was Father's Day, and she doesn't get to spend much time because he's an over-the-road trucker. So, you know, having this day was great. You know, it was great to be all together and go to the zoo and just have a good time. But I mean, it gave me time to finish up the documentary that isn't it ironic? Don't you think? It's like waiting for that plane ride. Holy moly. Let me see if I can pull up, because I want to try to put some try to bring up some clips to see, but I mean, this is a cult I probably would have joined. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah. So for those who don't know what we're talking about,
hold on. Let's play the thing first.
We'll play you the clip.
Our intro.
Ooh, I like it. Fancy.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. So we talked about the Duggars last week and the documentary Shiny Happy People. And this week, our task was to watch the docuseries called The Way Down about Gwen Shamblin and her church called The Remnant in Brentwood / Franklin, Tennessee. And yeah, I had seen it before, and so this was Davey's first time seeing it. I actually rewatched it today.
The whole thing?
I was like, wow. I did, yeah. Well, I was up at 5 a.m. like I told you. I was like, well, I might as well start working. So
this is true. I didn't realize. Oh, is that coming out of? That's coming out of there. I did not realize how like this took place recently.
Yeah.
All this stuff was very, very recent, and I was like, I didn't even hear of any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, so I was kind of like,
sorry,
you scared the hell out of me. I was like, did I go out again? Man. So for everybody who's continuing with this saga of my internet, I have bought a router to try to just have one router for this computer. That's it. Because my wonderful pets have decided that they were going to, actually this the one is going to chew up every single wire that is in the house. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping
necessary for the internet.
Yeah. So I'm hoping this works. So far, so good. You know. But yeah. So let me see if all right, I'm just gonna play the beginning of it like we did last week.
Okay.
And
What are you doing? You look so concerned.
no, it's okay. All right. Let me share screen. All right. So let's play the beginning of it, and then we'll start talking about it.
Okay.
Air 6 Bravo Kilo, did you copy your heading 130? 130, 66 Bravo Kilo. Air 6 Bravo Kilo, call maintain 15,000, 15,000. Six Bravo Kilo, departure headed here. Air 66 Bravo Kilo, headed here. I'm just lost communication with the side station at part of Smyrna. Do you see anything there? I know, sir, I don't see a thing.
Good afternoon. Initial reports indicated that a plane crashed into the water just off the shore of the Freight Sanders recreational area. We do anticipate search rescue efforts to continue through the night. We will provide updates as we have them.
The search continues after a plane went down into Percy Priest Lake.
Investigators updated us just about an hour ago, and they told me that their rescue efforts have now turned into recovery efforts.
Rutherford County officials just confirmed the 7 people on board are all leaders at Remnant Fellowship Church in Brentwood.
That hair.
How do you look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I look good?
I mean, it gets progressively worse throughout the entire documentary. Like that's like at the end. That's the last. It like goes in levels. It's like she has like a 4-story building there, but it started like as an apartment rental, and then it made its way up to a 4-story building. And so
it
basically,
was like she's rolling away money in her hair.
it might have been.
Might be.
I mean, so basically, the way it starts is she starts. She has what I mean. How do you want to start this? How does it start? I can't remember the beginning.
Yeah. So apparently, this woman, according to the documentary, this woman, Gwen Shamblin, she went to school to be a nutritionist or what have you, and somehow kind of like started this book called The Way Down, and it was a nutrition book talking about how you can lose weight, but it also had like this connection with God and like Jesus. So she connected losing weight with being a Christian pretty much. And yeah, and she sold like a ton of books and different things, and she just started her own church.
So like basically it was, instead of eating, you would only eat when your stomach was grumbling, and you'd eat until you were full.
Right.
But basically, it was like an episode of Sopranos where they would just eat and pretend to eat and just move the food around for 20 minutes and then take a bite. So, and then when you weren't eating, you were praying. So, like, you would kind of pray away, the cravings of the food and stuff like that. So, and that's the way it started. It started out small, and a couple of people here, a couple of people. She wrote a book about it. She was on TV. She was talking about it. And then it kind of evolved into a church because her husband was a pastor or something like that. He was so her husband was a pastor.
He was like went to school for it.
Yeah, that was his degree. And it was this small little town, Brentwood, Tennessee, and like they would just it was just this small town, and they would have these meetings, and let me see if I can get to a portion where
you know what it kind of reminds me of the IBLP.
Yeah, it is like this. I felt so bad for this poor lady. Share screen.
There's even what would Jesus eat, just to name a few.
She had been throughout the early 80s sharing her wisdom, what she had found about this thin eater, to listen to your body, to follow hunger cues. To her, it was divine revelation.
Every time you want to go to food, and it may be 15, 20 times a day, run to God.
She started incorporating scripture in people's.
I feel so bad for this lady. She's just so like, she's got no neck.
And
I
think she was one of the ones that they had she had lost over
160 pounds.
Yeah.
160 pounds, and she was, she still had no neck, but she lost the weight. But I felt so bad for her.
Started to come, but they would lose some weight and they would start to gain it back. And she finally asked the Lord, what's going on? And he said that he said to Gwen, she heard God say that they are not following me and my son. They're not being obedient. And that's how all of this started.
What I do in this program is teach people how to stop bowing down to the refrigerator and how to bow back down to him.
Other Christian diets have taught the same general principles, but she, in turn, expanded on it, and she began developing these Bible studies that became the foundation for the Way Now workshop.
So she created these Bible studies, and and it just started from there, and then it just kept growing and growing. And it was funny to see all the old internet, like AOL, but I mean, like I said, this is only a couple years ago, and then so she starts this, and then it grows. It just keeps growing, and it's all over the place. And then somehow it turns into this cult of obedience. She has this church, this mega church, and then, and then she gets divorced from her husband, right?
Of 40 years.
Meanwhile, the whole time, she's preaching about you're not allowed to, she's literally telling these people, you're not allowed to get divorced. Once you're, and it's another one of those fixer, like, this is your husband, you're subservient to your husband, you do whatever he wants you to do, and don't question it. And then she's like, if you're not allowed to get divorced. There's people who went to them and were like, we're going to get divorced. And then one lady's like, I can't stand my husband's voice. And she's like, no, turn into your husband and love his voice and everything. And she's like, and then I just began to love his voice. But so then her kids are like I swear to God, her kid looked like they were 16 and 17 when they got married.
I know. When I was like, when they saw the part, they're like, oh, and his wife so and so, and I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah, and she was on Larry King and all this stuff, and it was just, it was just about good.
Oh well, I was gonna say like, the reason why it reminds me of the IBLP though is because it started off as like a separate kind of like way to live your life in obedience to God, that like, and these little booklets like went out to all these different types of churches like all over the place. And then the difference is that she ended up making just that one part, like I guess there was like a big like Christian conference or something, and she went up there and gave a speech and totally dismantled the Holy Trinity, like the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And that's what differentiated her from like all the other churches. So then that's when she started her own church. And that's the only difference, well, of how it like really started when it comes to IBLP is not a church. It's just like a lesson. Thing. I don't know.
And
so go ahead.
And then she became like the matriarch of this whole thing. And then it was all about how, she broke up the Holy Trinity, and then she gets divorced from her husband, and her son becomes fat. He gets skinny, he gets fat, he gets skinny, and she, they didn't like that. And then like, then she finds Joe, or whatever. What's his name was Joe, right?
Yeah, Joe Lara, Lara.
Yeah, Joe Lara. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's okay to get divorced. All of a sudden, when I first saw the wedding scene, I'm looking at Joe and I'm going, this dude's gonna take over. This dude is taking over, and that's it. And then they go back and they tell the story of Joe, and I go, this guy, okay. He doesn't want to be the leader. He just wants everything. No, she could lead the church. She could do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And he was dude. That dude was fine back in the day.
Yeah.
That dude was fine.
He was like Tarzan in Manhattan or something, like a TV movie.
And then
it was very good.
And then they show video of him and his daughter's mother, and it looks like she's holding an iPhone, and I'm like, what's the timeline of this? Like, what the like, did this happen in 6 months? Like this whole thing? And it was pretty quick. It was in the 2010s when all this stuff happened. But yeah, like he was banging this 50-year-old woman from his acting class, and then and he was living with her, and he never owned any property, and it was just like, oh yeah, he's one of those dudes. And then, he gets together with this girl, buys a place in Tennessee, buys land, and lives in a double wide. And he's still gorgeous and just going from woman to woman. And then, this woman comes into his life, and they're on and off for years. And then they finally have a kid, and then he just takes her. And I'm just like, what? And I'm just like, and then he's like, yeah, no, she sexually assaulted my daughter, so I need her out of here, and I'm taking my kid.
Yeah, crazy.
And I'm like, this. By the way, this woman's she's like Bosnian or something like that, and I'm like, dude, this woman is European. There's no way she's gonna let you get away with this. When I heard the accent, I was like, yeah, no.
He's in trouble.
And she did. She lawyered herself up to be a lawyer.
She came to lawyer herself. That's like a whole other tangent. Like this whole it was only 6 episodes. Like the main meat of the part of it is 4. It's like the first 4, because what you need to understand is like this documentary came out in like 2020. So it came out in 2020 and it was only 4 episodes. 2020, 2021. And but in May of 2021 is when the leader of the Remnant Church, which is Gwen Shamblin, her husband, her son-in-law, and like I think it was like 4 other higher ups in
the other 2 other leaders.
Yeah, died in a plane crash. And so it was kind of like weird that you're seeing what people were going through at the time of the docuseries when Gwen was still alive, and then like how their life has changed afterwards. And it was like a really quick in between. So yeah. What's also, I don't know about you, Davey, but when I was watching this documentary, after a while, I stopped forgetting that it was about, at first, it was all about weight loss.
Yeah.
I completely forgot, like, that people were like, oh, well, people are literally starving themselves. It's like this woman evangelized her own eating disorder for everybody else to make it okay. This is what I kept thinking the whole time.
My favorite part is they're having a party and they each have like a plate of pizza and salad next to them. Did you catch that?
No.
One party at the that one party at the end, they each have an entire pie sitting on a plate in front of them, and they're just like, oh no, we didn't eat much, we didn't eat anything, we had a couple bites here, and then they had a whole Thanksgiving, and they were just like, oh, that was the first time in Thanksgiving that we didn't eat anything.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, but you forget because it turns into this thing where it turns into subservience of the husband and doing whatever the husband wants. And then, this money hungry woman who, once again, it starts out good. What happens with people with power is it starts off good. And then all of a sudden it just turned into greed because the poor lady who was making $22 an hour, and then she was paid $8 an hour, and then she's like, you said I was gonna get 22. You gotta humble yourself. And the lady's like, oh, I guess I should be thankful for this. I'm humbled.
Well, it's kind of strange because, like, what they talk about a lot in the documentary is how they use a lot of their followers as like workers or something for like volunteer work. And that's what that lady was doing. She was like, even though that she was like, if she had to work on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sundays, those were considered church days. So they wouldn't pay her for church days. So if those are the only days that she's really kind of working, that she's not getting paid for those days.
Yeah, she said she'd never get to see her kids.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, she never got to see her kids.
It seems like a common theme in this type of, in these cults, is isolation and groupthink, collectivism. You can't go one step or ask any questions, or else you're demonized, looked down upon, kicked out.
Sounds like a modern day cult that has a bunch of letters associated with it. Once you step out of it and you can't speak up against it and you can't say anything bad about it.
No idea what you're talking about.
I have no idea.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, and it just, I don't know. And I think like later on in the docuseries, probably in the last 2 episodes, someone actually brought up a good point in it, talking about how, how she hates how people would like look at this situation of this church and be like, I'm not stupid. I would never be part of this cult or anything like that. And the lady's like, I'm not stupid. And it's like, it's just a good example of people who are caught in a vulnerable time can get like wrapped up in something and it just become all encompassing, because it just seemed from the docuseries that they would love bomb people, which is a huge thing to get people to stay. And then if you're in that vulnerable situation, you're like, oh, well, these people are telling me the right thing. And then put in the God component where people are trying to find their spirituality and saying that it's their salvation that's in jeopardy. Like, it's a whole other step of
And
control.
It's that whole thing of like, you don't look at materialistic things, and you're doing things for the great. And like you said, they were all doing this shit for free. That's why, like, you were right when you compared it to the IBLP. Like, that was it. They have such similarities to it, because once again, the kids were raising the kids. Once again, there was spanking involved. Once again, they were telling them what instruments to use, and it was like,
yeah.
I want to play our sexy heartthrob, Mr. Joe. Like, look at that picture of him. Like, you think that fucking hair, like, you think like he's going to take over, but then you get like, you kind of think get the backstory.
For me, and it's also a lesson for Gwen. Joe was born in San Diego and spent most of his life in California. His mom married a very wealthy CEO of Wells Fargo Bank, and he lived in Newport Beach. And his stepdad had race cars and a plane, and he was exposed to the rich
like
lifestyle.
The big hair from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he also dated women that could fulfill his lifestyle needs.
There was a lady in our class, Dory Forsman was her name, I remember her. Tall, blonde, really beautiful lady, and she was in her 50s. I know that he moved into her house, and she had bought him a Harley Davidson. Now you got to remember, he's not working. I don't even actually know how he paid for his acting classes. She might have paid for him. And something happened, so either he cheated on her or something, but she kicked him out and lit that Harley Davidson on fire. And then he moved on to another one. And he didn't get his own place to start working at a job.
Yeah.
He moved into somebody else's place.
He bought a piece of land in the desert next to Palmdale. He lived in a double-wide mobile home, smoked a lot of pot and took a lot of drugs. He's had drug problems since he was 14, he said. He was a recluse. He's evaded taxes. I mean, his whole life is how to evade paying anything, but having a lifestyle of fun and doing what he likes to do, mostly his hobbies, flying, falconry.
Falconry?
In 2007, I cut off all communication with him and I was done. Until December of 2008, he called me up. At that age, my biological clock was ticking and I still had hope maybe for him. I fell for him again.
Honeysuckle, honeydew, double scoop of love. These are the things that little girl is made of.
My daughter was born in November 29th, 2010. It's the best day of my life.
Well, actually, it might be the best day of your life. It's actually going to be the second best day of your life. So that's Joe's baby mama. And that's the woman who he said assaulted the daughter. And
he said that because she was trying to leave him and take the daughter to go live with her family in Chicago.
Yeah, they wanted to go.
He didn't want that to happen. So he made up false allegations that she had assaulted, like sexually assaulted their daughter.
Yeah, because she had family in Chicago and, relatives and they were okay with it until the 11th hour. And Joe's like, man, I don't want to go. And so it was just like, she sexually assaulted her. And then, he had full custody of her. But yeah, he just jumped from woman to woman to woman. And then he found Gwen. and it was
Mm-hmm.
over. Like he had everything he wanted, everything and anything, and they had their own YouTube channel, and
Mm-hmm.
and he was playing the role of his life because everybody was just like, "What Bible? This guy never touched a
Yeah.
Bible. What are they talking about? Bible? He's a Christian? Like who? This guy who starred
Yeah.
in Tarzan in Manhattan, like was couch surfing from woman to woman. This gorgeous man, and it was just like, and he just found her. And like I said, I thought he was going to try to take over. And then another weird thing was like, so Gwen was the top of the food chain. So you thought, but she had 4 guys on top of her.
No, no, they said that's what they presented it to the people as. Like there was like 4, like there were leaders above her, and then it was Gwen. But in actuality, it was Gwen, and then she had like the 4 leadership dudes underneath her, and then everybody else.
Yeah, because they were saying how a woman couldn't run a church, and it was a woman was like, they couldn't see a woman as the lead in the church and stuff like that. Which she was just so manipulative. Just everything she did, they got everything for free. And then what really freaked me out was they started all these businesses on the reservation or whatever you want to call it. Like they had a realty, they had a car shop, they had a maintenance crew that was fixing things. Like she branched out into all these businesses, hair care, all this stuff. And like you said, you forgot this was all about weight loss. This wasn't about a church. This is all about weight loss. And she just had these companies and everything like that, so you wouldn't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
It was like a compound.
Yeah.
And what they said was what was really important about this too is that a lot of the people who went to the church were in that small community of Brentwood, and then they would have people coming in from all over the place to like they would just move to Tennessee to be a part of the church. There was one story about like a female track star who had the opportunity to go to all these different schools and such to be part of like track and field, but she ended up choosing like a small college in Nashville just to be close to the church so she could still be a part of the church, and then ended up like forgetting about school and everything and her scholarship for track, and just was like both feed into the church the whole time.
Yeah. And it's just like you said, they all jumped headfirst into it. And they wanted everybody the same. And once again, just like the IBLP, everybody was wearing the same kind of clothes and looked almost exactly the same.
But but in the Tennessee, it was like the basic bitch style. Like seriously, everyone was wearing basic bitch, like fall, like what do they call it? The Marty McFly outfit with like the puffy
puffy jacket.
It was like, it was like that type of like Southern, like what people call like the basic bitch stuff. It was for real though, but it was.
I mean, and then the
not
woman
like the
who
whole long stuff.
not like the long, but the woman who, speaking of basic bitch, the woman who asked her husband for Starbucks the one day, and he was like, "You could either have Starbucks or dinner, your choice." And it's like, holy crap! Like it was. They had, and then the poor woman who was working as a nursery woman who was she was it the one who was on was on antidepressants? Yeah, she was on antidepressants. No. No, it was the one of the woman that they told to go get off birth control because this.
Oh yeah.
Anger, whatever. What was his name?
Ted Anger.
Ted Anger. Best name ever. And they said it described. And then and then he decided Ted Anger wasn't good enough, so he legally changed his name to Ted Angier.
It's that little dash above the E.
It was Ted Angier, and I went, "Oh my god, no, he didn't. No, he didn't." And not only that, he was pompous enough. It was 2 D's. It was TEDD. Ted. Ted Anger. And that was one of the people that these women would have to go to or talk to. And like, hey, you know, this is happening. And the husbands would be like, you don't want me to call Ted? And they're like, Ted was the most, and I mean, you see Ted like happy, and they're like, Ted was the most miserable person we've ever met. Like the name was like real. So this lady who was like forced into being a babysitter for 8 to 10 hours a day, you know, and then her husband would come home and want sex, and she's like, I don't feel like doing it. And he's just like, nah, I'm calling Ted. And so she had to give in and give him, and she's like, and then the one lady just calls her and she's like, hey, why don't you have like a glass of wine or two and loosen up? And then, yeah. And even if you don't want to do it, just let your husband do it anyway. Cause you know, cause he's the husband and you have to be subservient. And I was just like,
yeah. Well, and one thing that's like that they talked about in the documentary, I feel like there's a lot more that we don't know on like operations wise on how things were going, because I think they focused on like so many different things, but I really want to know like the day-to-day type stuff, because you have people talking about how they couldn't go to weddings, they couldn't have people over, they couldn't go anywhere unless they talked to one of their leaders or whatever. Yeah. And then they would go up to Gwen and see if it was okay if these people did this, that, or what have you. But they also had this thing like if they felt like, oh, there was an example that, so Gwen Shamblin's daughter, Michelle Elizabeth, but she goes by Elizabeth, ended up having a 5-month-old son who died of SIDS. And they told basically the people in the congregation felt like because I guess like the Shamblins are said, it's not something that we did. We've been doing everything right. There's someone in our flock who isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's why God is punishing us. And they had people go around to the people in the congregation's houses who they thought were like, who weren't doing that great on the weight loss program, saying that they were the stragglers, and like had like interrogated them to see if they're the reason why bad things were happening to people within the congregation.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was always, and that was the thing, it was always everybody else's fault. It was never their fault. Like, so there was the SIDS thing, and then it turned into murder.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, how did we get here?
Before you
go ahead,
go over to that. I was just thinking about that, like not taking responsibility in the time. And the biggest thing is the perception of perfection was huge among these people. Like you had to always be happy, like jovial type thing, and like nothing could ever be wrong. And that was like the perception that you had to give to people at all times, is what they were saying.
Yeah, so, and you could, like you said, you could never talk bad about the church. You could never, you know, nothing. Everything was perfect. Nothing, and then
your kids were well behaved, and
if they weren't,
glue stick.
Glue stick. Yo, that was insane. That was the most insane part. Like,
it took me a hot minute, no pun intended, to understand what they meant by glue sticks. And I was like, like those little Elmer's glue things, like how the fuck are you gonna do that? And then I was like, oh, like a hot glue gun glue stick. I was like, dang.
I didn't even understand it until they actually like explained it, or they showed it. They showed it in one part, and I was like, what the? I didn't get it, and then they showed it. I was like, oh, that's what they were talking about. But come on, you stupid internet! I can't open a webpage.
Yeah, while that's going on, I'll just give a preface before you bring that up. So during this documentary, they're talking about like, okay, how their kids are well behaved and everything. And apparently there's like this whole thing on how they would teach you how to discipline your children by like basically beating him in the leg with a huge glue stick and everything. And I guess there was this family that had gone to the church. It was like an Easter weekend or something, and they had babysitters for the kids. I swear to you, when they talk about like all this kids, like all the kids like going off and like being babysat, I swear to you, it probably had some swinger aspect to it. I am 100% convinced that happened, and no one wants to talk about it. I don't know why, but I have a feeling.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, because once again, it's the kids watching the kids again.
Yeah.
Because it's always just like, you know what? You might be absolutely right. You might be absolutely right, because it's always the kids watching the kids. It's never another adult watching the kids. It's always the kid. Oh, man.
And then you have to think about once Gwen divorced her first husband, Dave Shamblin, and got married to Joe, then all these other women in the congregation started divorcing their husbands, one, but also women actually started leaving the church. And what they were saying is that if the woman left the church and the husband stayed at the church, they'd hook the men up with other women from the church. So that kind of goes into my theory that it was like some type of weird, like swinger-esque type thing. She probably had one of those lists like they do if you look into the polygamists that were out in Utah. Was it Warren Jeffs type thing? And they're like, oh, well, I've seen Susie Joe. She would really go well with Billy Bob, like type stuff going on over there.
Because the lady whose husband, one lady that's husband was stayed in the church, they hooked him up with the babysitter.
Yes.
The babysitter. So the wife divorced him, and then like 6 weeks later, he's engaged to the babysitter or getting married to the babysitter 7 weeks later, something like that. And I'm like, and then the black woman, and then it was funny because she was like, and I liked her, and the black dude who was thinking about offing himself, and he was just like, and like I felt bad for that dude, but like she was just like, I told him. You could either leave that. I don't want to see, because I'm going to beat the piss out of you.
I know. I'm gonna be the piss out of person that took the picture about the piss beat the piss out of the girl that's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And she's like, everything was better after that because he left the church.
Yeah.
But I got sidetracked real quick. So I want to go back real quick. So anyway, so this family leaves the kid with the other children that are watching the children. And the little boy, whose name was Joseph, was really, really upset. And so the babysitter asked the dad, like, how can I get him to calm down? And she said that he said, if you hit him really hard.
Well, he went like this.
Yeah.
And she was taken back by it. Mm-hmm. And she was like, and then he was like, just beat him. And she was like, I'm not gonna do that. Mm-hmm. And then she walked by the television one day and she saw a picture of little Joseph. And it was said that he was dead. Mm-hmm. And she was like, she told her mom that was the guy who said to beat the son. And so like this family was like messed up because the first baby died I was confused because it said the first baby died of SIDS, but was that the baby that head? Did they crush the head or something like that, or was that Joseph?
No.
Okay.
That was Joseph. Okay. So this is how the story. So that family who had the little boy who died, they also had an infant who had died 11 weeks prior. Now, what was said is what was reported is that the baby had died of SIDS, but that's sometimes they put that if they don't know what happened. But there was also saying that there was speculation that it might have actually been the kid who killed the baby because he kept saying that how he didn't want the baby in the house. That was the speculation. So they said that it was kind of weird that within an 11-week period that not only did they have one child pass, but they had two. But what happened to Joseph was just horrific too.
Yeah, so they were going out to church, and Joseph was getting out of hand, and they beat little Joe. They beat little Joe severely, and then put him in a wicker basket, wicker chest.
Yeah.
Put this kid in a wicker chest.
And apparently they also and he was kept popping out of the chest. So they put bungee cords around it so he couldn't open it. And apparently they slammed the top down so hard that it hit his head. And like they said, it was like a combination of him hitting his head really hard and suffocation is why he died. Awful.
And then but there's tape of her and Gwen talking about beating the child.
Yeah.
And then Gwen's like, nah, never happened.
The tape has been doctored.
The tape has been doctored. And it was like, and poor Joe's just sitting there going, yep, tape was doctored. Yep, tape was doctored. Anything. Joe had the life, and anything he wanted, he got. And then she wasn't showing up for a while, and they were going on these lavish vacations. Meanwhile, you needed permission to leave, like you said. You couldn't do anything with anybody else outside the church, and they were going on these lavish vacations that they told everybody not to do.
Well, you know what? It actually reminds me of NXIVM cult too. I don't know if have you heard.
I've heard a little bit of it, but I haven't completely heard of it.
They got a documentary on that one too. It's so good. But what reminds me of it of NXIVM is that with NXIVM they had all the people that were part of one part of the group had to text, they always had communications with the person and always had to communicate via WhatsApp or whatever. And that's exactly how it was in this remnant thing too, is that you always had to be able to get in touch with your leader always had to get in touch with you. And also their leaders had the logins and passwords to all their social medias and everything. So it was 100% control. There was so much. We can't even go over everything in an hour, but it's just insane.
And so, we're at 53 minutes, so we gotta wrap this up in a bow. So everything that they said that was wrong was because God was punishing them because they weren't being true and honest and all this stuff. And then they're on their way. Well, okay. Oh my God. So there's this guy and this woman who are parents to this girl, and this girl meets this guy called Jackson. And Jackson brings this girl, Delaney, into the cult. And the father plain out asked Jackson, are you trying to convert my daughter? And the guy goes, yeah, it was like a 17, 18-year-old kid. Yeah, no, I'm converting your daughter.
Kiss and vinegar, that kid.
So, the parents are dead set against it. They bring the daughter to talk to somebody who left it, and she didn't want nothing to do with them. She didn't want to go. She had all this anxiety because it was on a Wednesday, and Wednesday was church, and she didn't want to miss church. So, she just disappears, right? And she calls them. She says she's fine, and she's with the cult. So, fast forward a couple years, it's their wedding. It turns out that the father and the mother didn't want to go because they didn't want to go to that church. They didn't want Gwen to officiate the wedding. And the daughter finally talked her husband into it, and they were going to get married in a different venue with somebody without Gwen. Now thinking about it, she was the reason why Gwen ended up the way Gwen did. Because she was Gwen was supposed to officiate that, and if Gwen was officiating that, she would have been on that flight. So fast forward, the daughter, they changed venues. Gwen's no longer officiating it, so Gwen doesn't go to the wedding. Instead, Gwen and her husband and her son-in-law and the two leaders from the church and their wives are on their way. I believe it was to CPAC in Florida for 2021. To speak there, and they go up in an airplane that Joe was flying, and Joe had only been rated for non-instrumental flying, so like he wasn't, you have to go and get rated and continuously fly for a certain you have to be pretty much an expert flyer to just go by your instruments, because if it's cloudy like it was that day, you can't see and you get disoriented, and the plane you can think you're going left, but you're going right. You could think you're going up, but you're going down. You have to go by your instruments, and you can't look outside. So they took off, made a U-turn, and that's what you heard in the beginning of it. They made a right. They went down. They went up. They went down. They went up. They went down. They went down at the speed of 30,000 feet per second.
That's like he passed out and like hit the thing, and they're like, oh shit.
And they said it's normally 500 feet per second, but 30,000 feet per second. Mind you, they were only 25,000 feet up in the air.
It's like, oh my God.
So they went, and it was only 8 feet of water that they crashed into. So they died. And like I said, it's ironic because she spoke the entire time about how if you don't live by God's will and you don't do the way God wants you to, you'll be cursed. And, she put a curse on that poor woman that had the miscarriage, and she died. All them people died. 7 people,
Yeah.
And so it was left to her daughter to run. And her daughter, oh my God.
That poor girl's got anorexia like so bad.
She
looks awful.
She looked like a skeleton at one point.
I know. And I was like, girlfriend, with your coloring, do not wear that type of makeup. It was like red. She was wearing like orangish red stuff on her eyes, so they looked even more sunken in. And I was like, oh, it was bad.
Red lipstick.
Yeah.
She did not. She was she was wearing a white dress at one point, and they like blended in together. You thought that she was just like,
oh,
yeah.
It's like she just didn't look healthy.
No.
It just looks so sickly.
And there's
she's
so
a pretty
much
girl too, and it's just awful.
And her husband died, and that's another thing. Like grieving, you aren't allowed to grieve. You're not supposed to grieve. And then somebody died in the church that was major before they. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. The baby that died, her grandson, and they actually had like a mourning. They mourned him, and everybody was like, we don't do this. Like, what are we doing? Like, you're not supposed to mourn. You're supposed to just celebrate their life and keep going. And when she died, and they were at the wedding, and they're like, do we tell anybody? Does anybody know? They're like, everybody's having a good time. Does anybody, like, the parents knew, and like, and they just had no idea. I think some people knew, but they just went about it. But yeah, if it wasn't for the if it wasn't for that father killed them because he was adamant about not going.
I did not even think of that at all.
I just put it like it just came to me. Like that father was the reason. Because he hadn't seen his daughter in like 4 years. And then finally out of the blue, once again, if you believe in God, that is a sign that was like out of the blue. She's like, yeah, we changed it. She's not going to do it.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And then she goes and they're on their way to Florida. And then oh my God. And then the poor Joe's baby mama, like, that whole thing where she thought she was on the plane and she's bawling on video.
Yeah, so Joe's ex, Joe was supposed to have his daughter that
June 28th or July, what was it? May 28th. She gave Joe the daughter. And they had taken many trips. Yeah, they had taken many trips to Florida because she had property everywhere. And
thankfully the daughter was not on board. But it took the mom like a while for anybody to. No, not 2 months. No, the 2 months. No. It took them a few like hours to tell her like, oh, hey, by the way, your daughter wasn't on there. She's alive. And I think she was living in Chicago at the time and came back to Tennessee to go pick up her daughter. And it was a few weeks. It took her a few weeks to find out where her daughter was because the church took her and like put her with all the other kids who had lost their parents.
Because in the church's bylaws, if your parent dies, the church picks who your kids get to be with.
Oh, it's crazy.
And there's so much more. There's so much. I mean, it kind of got monotonous with the whole like subservient thing. Like they kept going with it. Like, I mean, it could have been done in 3 or 4 episodes. But once again, they did the first 3 episodes not knowing they were going to do a follow-up.
I know.
Because like it ends at the 3rd one. It says to be continued. And then I'm going, is that it? Is it over?
I think they were going to try and do like a series on it. Like they did with like Leah Remini and like her leaving sociology, Scientology, and like, because it was setting it up for like the parents of Delaney. They're trying to help people get out of the church. And then you have that one lady who, afterwards you find out she started up like an organization for people who've gotten out of the church and stuff.
Yeah, she started her own cult. I started laughing because she set up her own church. And I'm going,
no, it was a support group.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it was like she's like, yeah. And then I started this. I was like, So you went from one cult, but you see how people are just. It shows you how people are just. They want to belong. That's all it is. It's all it's about. It's people just want to belong to a social setting, and they will do anything, and overlook everything. Especially when you put religion into it, to just be a part of this social network. you know, and that's why I said I would definitely join this because I would definitely be there. And then you start losing weight, and then like your dedication to the Lord, and you're like, and it's working, and you're like, oh, you know, and then everything just comes together. And then next thing you know, you're working for free 7 days a week. You're like, what the hell did I just get myself? And then everybody gained the weight again. Everybody was just ballooned right back up.
Because you can't just starve yourself and then go back to eating regularly, because then your body just holds on to all that stuff because you're like, you did that shit to me once. I don't want that to happen to me again.
The poor lady who had holes in her liver.
And her kidneys. Yeah. Crazy.
But yeah, there's so much much there.
So much.
And then they were starting their own reality show.
Way down south.
Oh man. And they're right. Like people in the South and religion, you throw religion into anything and they will attach themselves to it. Like football's a religion down in the South. You know, it's you throw religion into the mix and they just like hop onto it. But
well, as a person who I did grow up like my formative years, like from middle school throughout college, I lived in Florida. So like,
well, that's a different South. That's a different.
Not where I was, because where I wasn't on the. Okay, in Florida, they have a saying that if you live on the East Coast, you're definitely from New York or whatever, and on the West Coast, it's not like that. It's different, unless you're in Naples or anything like that's the rich people. But if you're on the West Coast or Central or like North Florida, it's pretty country. So I grew up with I was Catholic and went to and did Catholic school for a little bit, but I was like really into my church when I was down there, and I was around a lot of Southern Baptists, and they was talking about the guy that was talking about the difference between churches in the North and the South, and he was talking about like if you don't believe exactly what they believe, they just like want to convert you and tell you that you're wrong about everything. And that's exactly what my life was like with the people down there. I went to so many different churches, like with people. Like I went to Presbyterian church and non-denominational where they were speaking in tongues. And I was like, I'm never going back there again. It freaked me out. It was like, you know how they set up the tents type thing, and they got the preacher there, and they're like, "Oh, come up," and everyone's like, "Oh!" They're falling down, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what is this?" I was like 15, like my mom drove me there. I was like, I can't get out. I was like texting my mom. I was like, come get me," and I was like, I don't care that it's like I'm sending her like $1 worth of texts at the time, you know.
Yeah. When text used to be.
Yeah. So.
It's
true.
It's crazy. It's crazy, but yeah. So glad to be back in this, and thank goodness we had to go there because I got to watch this whole thing. But yeah, it's all. It feels like it's all the same now. Like everything is about subservience, and kids watching kids. Did you watch the Natalia Grace one yet?
I'm watching it right now. I was in the middle of watching like the 3rd episode or something when I had to get ready to come and do this, and I was a little freaked out because I'm like, yeah, it's different.
It's nuts. It's nuts. There's
I don't know what to believe right now.
Oh, dude, wait till the end, and you're still not gonna know what to believe. But that dad is nuts.
Yeah, he seems like he's very theatrical and an embellisher.
So
I was like, oh my God, he reminds me of my dad. That's how my dad tells stories. I'm like, yeah, you're full of shit, but keep talking.
Oh, the whole man, that in itself, that one's crazy too. That one is crazy.
Yeah.
And it takes a turn. It takes a turn to a totally different thing. And I feel bad. Let's just say I feel bad for the kids. And hopefully we'll talk about that one next week because that one's a roller coaster. That one is a roller coaster.
And I've got one for you too. All right.
Which one?
It's called House of Hammer, and it's about Army Hammer.
Oh yeah.
I started watching that last week, and I haven't gone back to it because it freaked me out so much, and I was having bad dreams about it. It was creepy.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
But if anybody else has any suggestions, I know we were like, oh, we're gonna talk about trash TV, but then we got on this docu-series of these crazy things, but it's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's
people are crazy.
The way documentaries are made, and I experienced this with the 30 for 30. ESPN does an amazing job with documentaries too. They do it so well. The E60s are so good. HBO does great jobs with document, but I mean, these are like this one was on Wii, but now it's on HBO Max. So I don't know. It's a lot, but the other one, the Natalia Grace one, you could tell it was made for TV, but it's
something that you see on ID Discovery.
Yeah, and
but it's probably because if you go on Max now, I guess they have a contract with Discovery.
Yeah,
so
it's fine with me because there's all everything that's on HBO Max is stuff that I watch and that me and my wife watch, so, but yeah. So once again, I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment. Like Momma J said, let us know what documentary you watched and, that we can watch. And, cause they're so interesting and they're so good. And you just realize there's a lot of crazy shit out there. There's a lot of crazy shit out there. I mean, oh, by the way, did you know who produced this little documentary?
I was going to ask you about that too.
I noticed that in starting episode 3.
I saw it. Yeah. So apparently, well, it's not apparent. She actually did. Chrissy Teigen was a producer on this.
Yeah. I was on the third one, I started looking. I was like, executive producer, Chrissy Teigen? What?
Yeah.
I was like, holy moly. But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, because at 5 a.m. this morning, I was reading an article about how she's upset that everybody's making fun of her new face.
Mom says I look like a lion. Sorry, Chrissy. Yeah. You messed up your face. Look what Madonna did. Madonna messed up her face too.
Good look, because they're doing this thing where they'll suck out the fat in between your cheekbones and stuff, and it just looks really. It just really looks it.
And then they lift it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm not her biggest fan, but whatever.
Me neither.
You do you, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Or if you're a boy, I don't know. People have been saying you're a too. I don't know.
No, I don't think she is. I think she's an old woman.
She's an old woman.
She's an old woman. That's all she is. But thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me at MW Troublemaker on Twitter. All my links are there. Momma J?
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at Suburban Mama1, Suburban Mama1, and you can catch me, Davey, and Biz every Tuesday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. So check us out there.
Business Party Podcast, and you can check them out also on Two Jacks One Scotch on Thursday at the same time, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I don't know about the we don't know either podcast because there's been a hiccup in it, so I don't know what's going on with that. But with that,
keep you updated.
We will see you on Tuesday.